Today on Tangible Talks, we are reflecting on our previous two completed podcast series. For those of you who are new to the channel or just dropping by, we started this podcast journey at the beginning of this year. Professionally, I'm a data analyst, and in the business world, we are wrapping up the first quarter, reflecting on our progress thus far, and tweaking goals as needed. With this idea in mind, Rita and I thought it would be fun to have our own quarterly reflection episode to review and revisit our favorite tangible takeaways that we've been using in our everyday lives.
When we began our journey at the beginning of 2024, we knew little about creating a podcast. We just knew we should try. And so here we are with two series, a podcast channel, and a YouTube channel. It's not bad for beginners within 3 months. It isn't a bad idea to remember where you've come from. Not to the point of going back, but remember where you once were compared to where you are now. Psalm 77:11 says, I will remember the works of the Lord. Yes, I will remember the amazing things you did long ago. Jesus said at the Passover supper, do this in remembrance of me. Or he was saying, remember me.
And so we are looking back, remembering and sharing our favorite moments over the past 3 months. Join us today for our quarterly review on Tangible Talks.
Hi, Jana.
Hey, Rita. I'm excited about today. This is going to be a fun one.
You know, I think that we begin all of our podcasts with, I'm excited. That's a whole lot better than I've been dreading this. I have been reflecting on this when we decided to do a remembering podcast. And I went back and listened to every podcast. And I think I have 3 pages of notes. And that's so funny because I'm making notes on something I said that I made the original notes on. So that isn't lost on me. And I had my top 3 last night. And when I went to bed, I started just reflecting on it. And this thought came to mind. I had to get up and write it down. And then this morning I got up and continued it. And I'm really excited the way that it's coming about.
Similar experience here. I did not go back and listen to every episode. I did go back and listen to a couple of them. And it's funny because I'll have forgotten that I said that, or I would have forgotten that you said that. I was like, oh yeah, that was pretty good. Or Jordan will mention something that he's heard, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that we talked about that.
Yeah.
So it's funny what you do forget unless you spend some time reflecting. And this is something that I've tried to make a practice just in my life, trying to be present, but also trying to remember and reflect on things that have happened. And I think that that's an important part to help you to grow.
It is important. And it was very inspirational for me. I was encouraged. It is hard for me to listen to myself when I do a podcast.
Oh, same.
It
voice.
is. Yeah, I hear myself take a deep breath every time that I start to speak.
I love that.
Do you?
I do. So I do a lot of the editing, and when I hear that, I'm like, oh, this is about to be good.
Thank you. Thank you for that. You encouraged me. So that's really good.
And also, my favorite word that you've ever said on the podcast is Pharaoh. I will never read the word Pharaoh and not think about you.
It's so Southern, isn't it? Well, I think you're going to have another one today. I think you're going to get another word that is so Southern out of my mouth that you're going to love it. Let's hope so. So I had thought, I haven't shared with you what my top 3 are. And you haven't shared with me what your top 3 are.
No.
And so I don't know how you want to do this. Do you want to go first and then I go second?
How about you share one and then I share one and we'll just go back and forth.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, I think that we should have honorable mention.
Yes, I do have more than 3. It was really hard to narrow it down to 3, so I'm going to spatter in a couple. I'm going to cheat a little bit and spatter in a couple along the way.
Okay. Aren't you glad we're not doing this at 6 months or a year. Can you imagine? Wow. So, honorable mention number 1, the Dash poem,
Mm,
which reminds me of my number 2 on my hit parade of the number 3, and number 2 is the parable of the sower.
mm,
But the ending line of the poem, the Dash. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's action to rehash, would you be proud of the things they said about how you spent your dash?
mm.
And I have to say, I never heard that poem until you quoted it. It deserves honorable mention to me.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I didn't put that on my list, but now I kinda wish I would have. Um, it is. It's deep, and it really makes you think about your life and your day-to-day actions. Yeah, that's a really good one. We need to share that on the website.
Yeah, we do. And it reminded me of the parable of the sower, seed number 3. There are 4 seeds. It just reminded me of that. Would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash?
Mhm.
So reflecting on that, it reminded me of the parable. My second honorable mention is from you. Jana mentioned in episode 3 of Change. This is a quote from you. They are going to have big mindset adjustments to be ready for God's plan. And I think it's interesting looking back that we were in the series of Change. And in this, you use the term be ready, which is what we did our second series on. But at this time, we had not decided on that. So I thought that that was worth mentioning. And then the
Yeah.
last honorable mention is from First Chronicles, because see, I really wanted to have 4, not 3. So the last honorable mention is from First Chronicles 28:20. Be strong and brave. Do it.
Mm,
Don't be afraid and don't panic. For the Lord God, my God, is with you. He will not leave you or abandon you. And I went back and looked in my Bible, and I had underlined this and had written a date out beside it, and it was January the 26th of 23, 1 year before we began this podcast.
mm.
Do it. So those are my honorable mentions.
Yeah, those are some really good ones, and I think the mindset one is huge. I know any big event or change that I have made in my life has required a mindset adjustment.
Mhm.
Some that come to mind that we did somewhat talk about on other podcasts, but I'm gonna re-mention just to reiterate, changing my health and wellness
Mm.
required and still requires a big mindset change. Not eating for enjoyment, I guess, is really learning how to use food for nourishment and not pleasure. I've always been a big foodie. So, in order to be healthy and eat healthy, I had to make that mind change.
I just want to say one thing about what you just said. Ouch. Ouch. I really need to pay attention to that, because when you say that, I can feel it hit me, because I need to get back to that. I've been lax in it, and I could give all kinds of excuses, but I just want to say what you just said. Ouch. And now I need to change my mindset on that, and that's what I need to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and really, in order to change your mindset, so one of my honorable mentions, I'll go ahead, it fits in nicely here, were the 4 times that people change
Mm.
by John Maxwell. And the one first reason was they hurt enough they have to, they see enough they're inspired to, 3, they learn enough they want to, and 4, they receive enough they're able to. And that health and wellness component for me is somewhat a combination of 1 and 3.
Mm.
So I mentioned in our last episode that both Jordan and I lost a parent in our 20s, and it was really hard. And it's still hard. It's hard not to have them around, especially now that we have JoJo. But they both had health issues in their late 50s, and so that it hurt.
Mm,
And I know that everything's not preventable, but becoming a parent and having that experience of losing two parents, essentially, because I mean, Beth was like a parent to me, it really changed my mindset. It gave me my why. I need to do this because I want to do every single thing that I can to be healthy for JoJo because we don't have a lot of family. So that's my why, and that helps me overcome
mm,
sugar cravings and things like that. That it just helps me stay focused.
mm. I think chocolate has a voice, and I think it calls me when I go in the grocery store. I hear it, and I know exactly where it is, and I go, I know where you are, baby." The stuff I should not have, I know where it is, and it calls to me, and I'm making fun of this, but sometimes you gotta laugh at something
Yeah.
because the truth of it is so hard. It hits you really hard.
When
Um,
you said that, it reminded me of the Moana song. She's like, "It calls me." And I just
it
pictured you in
calls
the
me.
grocery store like Moana, just going to that chocolate aisle. And I feel that too. I love dark chocolate. I still incorporate a lot of dark chocolate into my life. And it's a balance, right? You
Mm,
have to
it's a balance.
you have to find balance in not depriving yourself, but also loving yourself and nourishing yourself with foods that are going to make you feel good and make you feel not only better about yourself, but just literally make you feel better. And you're not alone in that. I think that a lot of us struggle with all of that because the food is manufactured to make us. It calls
Yeah,
to us biologically because of what they put in some of that stuff.
yes.
So,
Oh, well, we can't get on that one.
yeah, like we can't you and I can get off on that
We
tangent, so
could,
we're going
but
to just
we're not going to. And I would like to also add that the exercise bike and the walking trail, they don't call me. I don't know if they don't have my number or my email or whatever, but they don't call me like chocolate calls me. So, just wanted to say that.
Oh, I like that. That's funny.
So, what are your honorable mentions?
So that was one. Another one of my honorable mentions is you mentioned this, and I don't remember. I don't have my notes as documented as yours, so I apologize. But you mentioned this, and I've never thought about it before. It's so obvious, but you mentioned that the root word for disciples is discipline,
Mm,
and how they had to live a very disciplined life. And that was just an aha moment for me. And I was like, wow, that's
mm,
yeah. Discipline's not a bad thing. I think
mm,
so many of us think about discipline as like being disciplined in school. And so we have that negative connotation attached to it. But really, practicing discipline in your life, man, it can really provide a lot of freedom. It can
mm,
clear up a lot of unnecessary stuff that gets in the way. Like when you're disciplined, you're intentional. I almost think you could interchange the two words.
mm,
And so trying to my day-to-day action thinking about ways that I can be disciplined in my work to be more effective, at home to, be more present with my family, to find those times to work out. That's something that I've really, since starting the podcast, have dropped the wagon on. That
mm,
my workouts had really fallen off. And so here lately, like I've really been trying to be disciplined and start that up again and viewing that as a good thing. Like
mhm.
being disciplined, that's something to be proud of. It's not something to feel bad about. Let me see if there were any other honorable mentions that I have isolated. I feel like there was one. No, I think that's all.
Okay.
I had those two, and then my other ones are kind of I'll spatter in a couple that we mentioned, but they all sort of are the same topic.
Mm. Okay, so now we get to our 3.
Yep.
after the honorable mention. So, number 3 of my favorites, and I know this is gonna surprise you, Jana, sarcastically said, Into the Desert.
I knew that
Oh,
was gonna be on your list.
man. I just Into the Desert, and is that our least listened to podcast, I think, is
It
Into the
it
Desert?
is considering how long it's been out,
Okay.
if that makes sense. So,
Yeah,
it's of the ones that have been out for a while, it is our least listened to.
and there is so much into that term, "into the desert," that I see. And it's not just one little verse, it's a whole bunch of stuff. It was in the desert that Egypt was taken out of the children of Israel to prepare them for the promised land. That took place in the desert. If they had gone immediately into the promised land, then they would have just set up a new Egypt. I mentioned that. Um, the only thing that would have changed if they had left Egypt and gone into the promised land quickly, which we know from scripture was just an 11-day journey. It was an 11-day journey that took 40 years.
Mm,
But if they went in 11 days, nothing but the longitude and latitude would have changed.
mhm,
And why does this mean so much to me? I don't know. I think I need to be reminded that God wants the best for me. It may take a long time, but it's worth it.
mhm.
It's in
Well,
go ahead.
and it just takes a while to change those mindsets, especially those
Mm.
deep rooted and ingrained in you.
Oh, you're 30? You're in your 30s?
Mhm.
Oh, honey, get to your 60s, okay? It just gets so much better. But I do wanna say Moses was older when he went
Mhm,
back to Egypt. So, maybe when you're older, you don't have the energy to fight. And Abraham, I mean, he was old before he had children because maybe he finally just stopped fighting. Maybe that's what it is with me. But it's
mm,
in the dry, hot, barren areas where you decide if you're gonna run back to the former or you're gonna push through to the unknown where God is leading you.
mhm.
And maybe that's why I love it so much because I get there and I go, "Oh, I don't know that I wanna do this." But if God's leading you, you gotta do it. And I have to tell you, it's a struggle, it's a fight, and there are things that God's gotta work out of me, and I think that's why I like Into the Desert.
Well, and in the struggle is where you often grow and strengthen your faith and
Mm,
your relationship with God, and not only that, you also strengthen yourself.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
That
Okay,
that
so
that's
that's
a good
number
one.
3 on
So that
yours.
that's 3 for you? Okay.
Mhm.
So my 3rd comes from last week's episode about love, and this is kinda where I'm cheating. It's kinda 2 things, but they are on the same topic, so I'm only counting it as 1.
Okay. I kinda love that. You're cheating on me.
So you said, "If you want to go far, go together. If you want to go fast, go alone." And I just thought that was I loved it. It really picturizes marriage.
Mhm.
And I think that Jordan would really think this because he moves at such a faster pace than me. I'm sure there are so many times, I know there are actually, where he's just like, "I'm just gonna do it myself because you're taking too
Mhm.
long. Like, you just can't get on my level." Um, but when you walk together in a marriage, and this is well, I guess I'm kinda throwing 3 in here actually, because you also said walk in love, not just fall in love, which I also really liked. But when you walk together and you grow together and you make decisions together, when you truly live life together, you are gonna go farther. I
Yeah.
know for a fact I wouldn't be where I am in
Mm.
my career without Jordan kind of holding my hand and walking me and encouraging me along the way because I wouldn't have thought that I could do it on my own. And then the verse that I'm attaching to this whole concept is Corinthians 13, verse 4. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. And this has come up since we've recorded that podcast. One area that I could really get better on in marriage is to not keep score. Man, I'm bad about it. And it's silly things. It's well, I did the laundry or I did this, I did that,
Mm,
I need to not do that.
mhm. Love keeps no record of
Mhm.
wrong. I know when that verse really hit hard with me, and it was someone who was going through a very, very difficult time. And someone that was supposed to love them and encourage them in this time, and hear how strong I get. I'm probably pointing my finger. They just brought up everything wrong they had ever done. And it
Mhm.
devastated my friend. And my friend said, "Why'd they do that?" And I looked at him and I said, "Love keeps no record of wrong." I said, "So if they've kept a record of wrong, they don't love you."
Mhm.
And that's hard. But if you constantly keep score and a record of wrong, what you're doing is not a characteristic of God. That
No,
is
and
not God's nature.
I think it also tells more about that person than
Mm,
you.
mhm,
It talks more to their insecurities because I know the times where I do that, it's where I feel defensive
mm,
or where I don't feel maybe appreciated or I'm tired and just not in the best mood. That's when that comes out.
mm.
And it's so ugly, and I have found myself I think I've been counting, like, 4 times since that we recorded so, like, last week. So 4 times in a week, that's terrible, but,
And
that's the whole point of this, right?
we
We're
had a
trying
lot
to
of
take tangible takeaways and apply them to our lives so that we become better versions and more like God.
I'm sorry I, spoke over you. We had a lot of difficulty with last week. Our mic would stop working, and the thing is you had to listen to that episode. I don't know how many times just to edit it. So it's really kind of funny that you're telling me
Mhm.
that really hit home with you when you had to listen to it over and over again.
Right,
Mm,
somebody really wanted me to hear it.
you think? Do you think?
Oh,
Okay,
man.
so I'm going to my number 2 favorite,
Okay.
and that's the parable of the sower. Seed number 3.
So I'll just go ahead and say this is mine too. So we'll just talk about it
Okay,
combined because this was my number 2 as well.
okay. The seed sown among thorns is the person who hears the word, but worldly cares and the seductiveness of wealth choke the word, so it produces nothing.
Mhm.
This is one of the saddest verses to me. And I need to be on the watch for this. I don't need to go, whoa, so and so needs to hear that. Maybe I should play this for this person. No, God's dealing with me because if God has cleaned up, if He's helped me get that part out of my life, then when I see someone else who's struggling with it, I need to have compassion. And I
Mhm.
pray for them and I need to go, this is hard. This is going to be hard and pray for them. So that was the dash reminded me of this. Can you imagine your entire life if what you did was you cared too much for the for wealth and things that it produces nothing?
Yeah, and that's tough. Like that is tough when you really start to think about it. And I know it's something that I come back to time and time again. I mean, I can think about so we went to Disney World on vacation and I've mentioned this multiple times. My family clearly loves going on vacation, like, that's important to us. But I can get a little wrapped up in that because it's, "Ooh, well, I should buy these cute clothes to go on this vacation, or that would make this
Mm,
fun," and, like, no, you
mm-mm.
really don't need all the things. You don't need all the Disney shirts. You don't
Mhm.
need a different shirt for every single day. You don't need to there's nothing wrong with making purchases. But you do need to stop and reflect from time to time to think, is this essential? Is it providing some value in my life or someone else's life? And is this the best resource that I could use with this money?
Mm,
And there are definitely things that are non essential that I think provide and bring some value to your life. But we just got to be careful not to overdo it.
yeah. And it's an individual walk.
Hmm.
and you cannot force your opinions on someone else. You can't go
No.
in and go, "We're gonna clean up this mess. I can't believe you've got it," and that's not fair either,
Well,
because
and yeah, like you said, it's an individual journey and everybody is in a different part of that journey. Some
and
people
it's a
may just be starting out.
yeah,
Some people are, I mean, I'm a decade into this now. And so to compare yourself as a beginner to someone like me, like it's not going to be the
yeah,
same thing.
and it's a spiritual journey. There are
Yes.
spiritual lessons that we learn in the letting go or what
Mhm.
we hold dear to us. It's a spiritual journey.
I think something that's kind of interesting is that the more you practice that letting go and not needing as many things, it really
It
is freeing.
is.
And the opinions of others is a big one. And I
Uh,
mean, I still struggle with it somewhat. I mean, starting this podcast,
mm,
that was a thought that I had and almost an excuse for why I didn't even talk to you about it.
yeah, I
So,
know.
it's important to remember and be aware that that's there.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when you verbalize it, it makes it sound funny. Like if I
Well,
say aloud, "Oh, I'm not gonna start this podcast or I'm not gonna do this because other people are gonna think badly about me." When I verbalize that, it's almost laughable because, again, I don't have to, like, nobody cares what I'm doing. They just really don't.
yeah.
So
Well, I'm glad that we had the second one together. So, what's your number one favorite?
so my number 1 is the "What's in your hand."
Oh my goodness, that's mine too.
Is it really?
Yeah.
We did not plan that.
No, we didn't. Well, maybe that's why we're doing this together.
Maybe.
We're on very similar paths.
And I don't think we're alone in that because that is the most listened to podcast on both platforms, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that that's our favorite, and clearly a lot of people have connected with that one too. So,
This is the one that woke me up around 1 or 2 o'clock this morning.
mm,
This one is the one. And so I have a story to tell
okay.
for this one. And once I start the story, I may not stop. So, if you want to say something at the beginning, now's a really good time.
I'm just gonna let you go. I'm gonna mute
Okay.
my mic, and that way I don't fumble around and mess you up. So,
Okay. All right. So, number one favorite is an oldie but a goodie for me. I've known this verse for several years, and I mentioned how it played an important role in leading me through the Interview with God project in 2001. And it's Exodus 4:2. The Lord said to him, and the him here is Moses, but the him here is also you. The Lord says to you, what is in your hand? What do you have available? Because this is what you need to do what God has called you to do. Do you recognize what's in your hand? When I was a little girl, I had a bicycle and I rode around outside. And I would sing this silly song as I rode my bicycle. In my mind's eye, I can see me doing this. And this is what I sing. My baloney has a first name. It's Oscar. My baloney has a second name. It's Mayer. Oh, I love to eat it every day. And if you ask me why, I'll say, 'cause Oscar Mayer has a way with Bologna. How would you like to be woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning when you sang that? Okay. And so you're not going to get it right now. Jenna, you may get it, but
I don't get it.
oh,
I'm
I
not
love
there.
it. I love it. So in 2001, when Interview with God went viral, 13 million hits, okay? A couple from Bologna, Italy, Bologna, Bologna, Italy, reached out to me. They had seen my site and wanted to know if I would help them with their website. And so I started working with them. We did this through email and through our correspondence. We liked each other. And so Marcello and Rafa Torrey, they have a food and wine, a gastronomical tour. They take you on different regions of Italy. You go in, you cook with some of the grandmothers, the mamas. You go into kitchens and you cook with the chef and you learn to make pasta and you visit places where they have olive oil and you taste real olive oil and you taste wine and it doesn't give you a headache and it's good for your body, et cetera, et cetera. So 6 months into this process, they sent me an invitation. They said, why don't you come to Italy? You'll have to pay for your airfare, but while you're here, we will take care of your lodging. And so I said, okay. And so I invited my sister, your mother, and a cousin. And the three of us went to Italy. And this was I think it was September of 2002. And they are my dear friends. It's as if I've known them all my life. And I stayed with them in their house. I met Marcello's mother. I met Rafa's mother and father, Nino and Novella. They have three children, Emanuele, Francesca, and Tommaso. Emanuele came to the United States and stayed with us in the house. And so this friendship has been going on for years. And now the next part that I'm going to say, I want to preface it with this. Sometimes memories sneak out my eyes and run down my cheeks. And this is going to happen in this story. So with Marcello and Rafa, I've lost count of how many times I've visited them, but we always Skype. And on June the 8th, 2014, I received an invitation to talk with them on Skype. I had known that starting in December, their youngest son, Tommaso, was not feeling well. They had gone to the hospital for tests. So on June the 8th, Marcello and Rafa did a Skype call, and they said, the doctors here have done all they can do. There is nothing more that they can do. There is only one place that Tommaso can go to, and the doctor will treat him for free. But the hospital requires a $600,000 deposit. Rita, is as if they have asked us for $1 million. Millions of dollars, we do not have this. And I listened to their story and I cried with them. And I said, give me a minute. I will get back in touch with you tomorrow. Please give me some time. So we agreed to touch base the next day. And when I hung up from that Skype call, I said, okay, God, what do I have in my hand? What do I have available for this impossible task? I knew how to make a website. I knew about social media. I knew about PayPal, and you can receive funds that way. And so I had this idea of gifts for Tommaso. I secured the website. I was like, this needs to be in English and Italian. I reached out to PayPal and I said, okay, what's the magic number that when people start giving me something into this account that it's going to flag you guys and you're going to shut it down? And they said $10,000. And I said, well, I'm going to need a whole lot more than that. Who do I need to talk with? And I spoke with the people at PayPal who were fabulous. They were fabulous for me in this situation. And so I could set up a PayPal account that accepted euros, pounds, and dollars because Marcello and Rafa have friends in Europe, in the UK, and in the United States. So I put it together, did a little logo thing, called them the next day, and said, this is what I'm thinking. I said, I don't know if it'll work, but it's not going to cost you anything. I'm covering all of this because that was my gift. It's what I had in my hand. And they had a family meeting to decide if that's what they wanted to do. And they wrote me back. And so giftsfortommaso.org, the Facebook and Twitter launched on June the 11th of 2014. I spoke with Marcello and Rafa on June the 8th. So on the 11th, it launched. And we had a conference call on June the 11th, and they said, launch. We're going to go ahead with it. So it was live on the 12th. I came up with this little slogan, pray, give, share. We need you to pray for this family. If you can give, that would be great. But if you can't do any of those, then share these little social media things. So I created all these little graphics with that on there, gifts for Tommaso. Tommaso played semi-professional soccer. Tommaso is such an athlete. And it just so happened, isn't that something? Uh, it just so happened that Italy was in the World Cup. And so when we launched this, Tommaso's friends that were playing soccer heard about this, and they took the hashtag that we were using, Forza Tommy. Forza Tomas. Forza Tommy. FORZATOMMI. Well, some of them took a marker and wrote it on their chest. They didn't have a shirt on, and they took a picture of themselves, which, of course, that in itself just spread the word. And June the 13th, I created a soccer ball that was empty. It was just a white soccer ball. And as we raised funds, I would fill it with red. And then when we finished filling the soccer ball, I was going to make it green because Italy's colors are red, green, and white. So on June the 13th, we had $48,000. I didn't do an ad. I didn't get sponsors for this. On June the 14th, 100,000. On June the 15th, 127,000. June the 16th, 240,000. June the 17th, 370,000. June the 18th, 500,000. June the 19th, $600,000. And Marcello and Rafa said, Rita, it is enough. Shut it down. Now, when I was trying to figure out how to do this, what was in my hand, I had a friend call me and they said, where are you? What are you doing? I said, well, I'm in Colorado with Katie and I'm trying to figure out how to raise $600,000. And she said, well, how in the world are you going to do that? And I said, I have no idea, but that's never stopped me before. I had no idea. But the World Cup was going on. There were some people that were chefs that heard this story and they started sharing. It went crazy, and within a week there was over 21,000 followers on Facebook. I don't know how many on Twitter because I was so stinking busy just trying to keep up with everything. So June the 19th, we had $600,000. Now, for all intents purposes, we started June the 12th. So we're talking a week or so.
It's incredible.
Tommaso received the treatment, which was grueling. They went to Philadelphia, and I could give you the details, but I'm not going to do that. That website still exists. The Facebook still exists. Tommaso received the treatment. He went into remission, and he returned back to Italy, and it was wonderful. But in 2016, 2 years later, Tommaso was diagnosed with a different form of cancer, and he passed away September the 24th, 2016. And that was a moment of crisis in my life. And I felt like Job blaming God. Why did we raise $600,000? Blah, 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 blah. And I couldn't see. I could not see what was going on. So now the motto for this site, because Marcello and Rafa still have this going, and actually what they do is they help other families that are navigating the same waters they went through. And the motto now is, instead of pray, share, give, it's to remember, to inspire, to encourage. And I didn't even think of that until after I'd written my top 3, and we had already named this to remember. And now this precious family help others who are facing the same thing. And, at the beginning of this story, I sang that silly little commercial song about bologna. Bologna. I was 5 and I knew what bologna was, but I didn't know it was Bologna. And I didn't know the impact that Bologna was going to have in my life. And it was at 5 years old. I knew how to spell this. So that is the biggest "what do you have in your hand" story that I can share with you.
Yeah, I remember you sharing this story with me maybe a month ago. I don't remember how it got brought up or why we got to talking about it, but I remember being moved to tears. I mean, it
Mm,
really is an amazing and inspiring story and just such a display of what faith and trust and not giving up, not being crippled by what seems like impossible. I think Nelson Mandela has a quote that says, "It always seems impossible until it's done."
yeah.
And I mean, nobody would have nobody would have believed that you could do that.
Well,
And you
do that
didn't
in a
do it.
week. And see, we had to do it in a week because Tomasa had to start treatments at a particular time after he had finished the treatments in Italy. We were on a time frame. I think it was 2 weeks. And looking back at the PayPal transactions, the majority of the gifts were $25. $25 from these people, and we reached 600,000. Tomasa lived 2 more years. His story was shared. It really made an impact in his town, and his mom and dad purchased or they sponsor a soccer field in an area where there are children that they don't have a lot of privileges. They don't have a lot of things going on in their hometown, and so this soccer field is named after Tommaso. And that's I actually was there when they dedicated the soccer field.
Mm,
And in the sky, in the distance, it had rained a distance away. At the end of the dedication, there were two rainbows in the
mm.
sky. And Marcello, it wasn't lost on Marcello and Rafa. So that's why that scripture means so much to me. What is in your hand? What's available to you?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, no one would have believed that you could do that. No one had any faith, I imagine, that you would accomplish that. And you didn't accomplish that
Mm-mm,
on your own. You had to use what was in your hand.
mm,
So that was your knowledge on some of these existing things, but also you had to lean on God and you had to believe that it could be done and
Well,
put your faith into that God could do this.
what were we going to lose?
Yeah.
What was there to lose? I know how to do a website. I'm just going to, it's not wasting my time, but I'm just going to use my time. And then someone else saw the vision and they jumped in. And then Tommaso's friends started the hashtag Forza Tommy. And then it happened to be the World Cup. And then it happened to be that this, and then it
Mhm.
happened to be that. Because it's a ripple effect when you're willing to take what's in your hand. Even though you don't know how it's going to end, you walk it out.
Yeah. And I love the pray, give, share. I think that that's like you said that most of the donations were $20, $25. I think sometimes people feel crippled and that they can't make a difference because they don't have a lot to give. But this just goes to show when a lot of people contribute a little, it goes a long, long way. And even if you didn't have anything to contribute monetarily, sharing the story and sharing it with other people
Mm,
makes a difference.
mm,
It really does.
it does.
Wow.
Do you have anything to add? Because
I don't
this
I
was
don't
both
think I
of us.
can really add much to that. All I can add to my takeaway from it is that I am really inspired by Moses in general. He's
Mm,
one of my favorite
mm,
characters, particularly in the Old Testament, because he wasn't an obvious choice and he didn't believe in himself.
he wasn't an obvious choice to humans,
Yeah.
but he was God's choice because he was saved even as a child. But his mother saw something.
Yeah.
His mother saw something. God saw something. And if you're listening and you don't think there's anything special and people constantly remind you of that, because I grew up with that. I grew up with a father that said, "You're stupid, you're ugly, you'll never amount to anything, no one will ever want you." And this was repeated constantly. That is a human view, and it is not God's view.
Mm-hmm. And I just think he's inspiring. He inspires me because there are a lot of times where I don't feel confident enough to do something at first, but then I can be reminded of what's in your hand and of Moses and lean on others around me to be able to accomplish what I was so scared of.
Mm. Which we were scared of this.
Yeah. I mean, this is the perfect example of that. I
It is.
I would not be doing this on my own. But what was in my hand, I didn't even know it was in my hand. God pretty much told me what was in my hand.
There's
But to
that one
be fair,
too.
he had to do the same for Moses.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to close this in prayer. Dear Lord, as we look back on the amazing ways that you have spoken and worked in our lives, we say thank you. Thank you for leading us. Thank you for guiding us. Thank you for revealing your word to us in a tangible way. We thank you for those who are listening. We ask that you touch them, lead them, and guide them along their journey. Lord, touch those who are sick. Touch those who feel as if they have reached rock bottom and they have no hope. Lord, restore hope. Lord, thank you for all things. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I really loved this.
Same. I'm really glad we decided to do this. Once again, I feel like I got a lot out of it. So I hope our listeners did as well.
Yeah.
So once again, we just want to thank you guys for tuning in with us and joining us every week. You really do not know how much it means to us for you to be following along and tuning in and listening and then sending us words of encouragement. It really does make a huge difference. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
And, obviously, baloney is the word that's really Southern. You said you like the way I said Pharaoh. Well, now you got baloney. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.